All right, we are back, and we are recording this just on the eve of the Oscars. So we are we don't have an opinion yet on who won. This will be released basically we're gonna release this just before the Oscars. So
yeah.
You know,
Well, we have done the big big show.
Everything's big
show.
Yeah. So, what an Oscar show that was.
Indeed. Although I kind of blew it, didn't I?
Yeah, that's all right. Anyway,
the magic of
the magic. So, in any case, yeah, we'll be back next week with all of our Oscar roundup opinions and everything else. But in the meantime. There's not really anything else to talk about, right?
No.
What are we going to talk about?
Hopefully no one has actually been sexually harassed or anything.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it interesting, though, that has started to, I don't know, subside a bit. I mean, a few dangling. There's the Los Angeles Police Department is still evaluating whether or not they're actually going to bring any charges against Harvey. I think New York is doing the same thing.
Well, and Meryl Streep kicked him in the teeth for including her in his lawsuit, whatever it was.
But other than things that were already underway, there hasn't been a whole lot of new. As it was for a while there, when but I suppose that was always doomed to happen. Eventually, everyone would get ratted out.
This is all information overload. Our brains and our news cycle and our lives can only absorb so much stuff.
Yeah,
and that's just where we are. So, in any case, I'm gonna start off with we got a bunch of great anime, mostly from Funimation, but some cool stuff from other companies as well. And I will start off with something from Kraken Releasing, which is. Anime related. This is certainly Japanese. It has anime roots, but it is not an anime film per se because it actually has live action in it. But it is Garo, the Dark Knight. I wonder where they got that title. Garo is a definitely very creepy anime. Anti-hero, I guess, is maybe the best way to do. There's a whole mythology to Garo that Garo basically looks like an angry reject from the villain pantheon for the Power Rangers. They're all sort of variations on samurai aesthetics, right? The horns and the armor, and then we just take all that stuff and we just sort of make a monster out of it is the idea.
Yeah.
Which is all that you see on Power Rangers. All of that stuff is samurai aesthetic. But anyway, this if you know the whole Garo mythology, I guess this will be more meaningful. I'm sure this probably plays better in Japan than it does here, but it's a beautiful Blu-ray to look at. If nothing else, it is visually very, very impressive, and they've done a wonderful job putting all this on here, but don't expect for it to make much sense unless you are already immersed in the mythology itself. Another Gundam, but this one's really, really great. This is Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn, the complete collection from Right Stuff. You can find this by going to rightstuffanime.com. That's stuff with one F, rightstuffanime.com. Head on over there for this latest, greatest, pretty awesome Gundam. The mythology of Gundam is just massive, and it just encompasses so much. But all you really need to know is that there's a lot of war, and the suit is really cool. And if you can get to that point, the animation here is really some of the best that I've seen in the various Gundam incarnations. This takes place 3 years after the end of the second Neo-Zeon War.
The second Neo-Zeon
I thought that first Neo-Zeon War was just so bad, but the second one really, really took the cake. Anyway, there are always these different empires and different groups and different movements, and you really have to sort of immerse yourself in this to completely make sense of it. But it's okay. I still love all of the techno stuff, and the animation is just really, really first rate. And there are a ton of special features on here, including episode recaps, which you need because they are so incredibly narratively dense. 7 episodes total. And it's a cool set. Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn, the complete collection. And then we got a couple from Sente, which are sort of in the same vein. Sente releases a lot of this stuff. It's all kind of wacky, nutty, teen, kid-oriented stuff, and it's fun-ish. 24 episodes of Nan Nan Biori, which it's that goofy, wacky, kind of pubescent thing that they enjoy enormously on Japanese television. And it gets silly, but I guess it's a thing. And then with the wonderful title, Flip Flappers, the complete collection. This skews a lot younger. You got to probably be about, I guess, 10 or 11 to really immerse yourself in this one. This is all about, teenagers trying to figure out what they're going to do when they grow up, and it's silly. Flip Flap is a secret organization that is at the center of this thing, and it's what they use to sort of add a whole kind of a genre footprint onto what's otherwise kind of basically just silly Japanese teenager stuff. And then we get another Dragon Ball Super Part 3. This is episodes 27 through 39. Nothing new here. It's just beautifully rendered, nicely animated, but otherwise it's more Dragon Ball, and they stick to their knitting. That's for sure. They're really not taking any chances here. Nothing new, nothing extravagant. It just keeps on trucking. And now we get into the really interesting stuff. The Akiba's Trip, the animation. These are all Blu-ray DVD combo sets, by the way, except for one. But everything that I'm going to go through right now, they are, unless I tell you otherwise, assume that it is a Blu-ray DVD combo set. Akiba's Trip, the animation, is based on a game. And this is, it feels like it, frankly. It feels very gamery. And then it veers into this vampire thing, where it's kind of like a part vampire superhero team dealing with this is set in the city of Akiba. Again, a little bit too tied to the games. Tuken Ranbu Hanamaru, the first season, beautifully animated, futuristic mythology, takes place in the year 2205. And it's like projecting samurai culture into some kind of a dystopian future, like, let's say, kind of a super futuristic samurai Mad Max in a way. The subject of history and revisionist history is really crucial to this. It's a very interesting concept, especially in Japan, where the subject of revising their own history is a subject of constant debate. That's Tuken Ranbu Hanamaru, the first season. Really a very interesting and incredibly well animated show. Monster Hunter Stories Ride On, Season 1, Part 1. This skews kind of young, not really that interesting. It thinks that it's, like a human animal myth. They do that. They do those weird human animal kind of hybrid things every once in a while. Yeah, they're not really. It's not my scene, but I know some people are really into that stuff. Very interesting is Izetta, The Last Witch, the complete series. That's Izetta. Takes place in right around World War II time, and it's like a fantasy, a supernatural fantasy set in the 1940s. I don't really know any other way to put it, but it's fascinating, and I hope they can do more of this. It's really very well. It's very imaginative. It's very cool. It's got a very old school anime vibe to it. And then the DVD, the only DVD of all of these, and I'm not sure why this is only on DVD and not Blu-ray, is Scarred Rider. Gosh, I don't even know how to anyway, the titles are sometimes insane. Yeah. I don't even know how to pronounce this. XECHS. It's a capital X, ECH, capital S. This is kind of another mythological thing with young adults and teens who live in a world called the Blue World, where they are under attack by Red World, and there are different sort of psychobiological instincts between the two different races, and these young heroes have to somehow sort of defend their world. And that's basically it. There's nothing else to it. It's a very weird concept. It's kind of cyberpunky, kind of teen oriented, but we'll see. Anyway, and then the last few here, All Out Part 1, which is just a rugby series. I don't know how anybody came up with the idea to do a rugby series on anime, but they did. And it's okay. I like rugby. I find rugby fascinating. I don't know that I'd want to watch it in anime. It's weird. Keijo, the complete series. Now that's Keijo, not just Keijo, but Keijo, Keijo, with 7 exclamation points after it. Keijo! That is literally the title. The title has 7 exclamation points. If you put an 8th on there, or if you miss one, it's not the correct title.
The internet will not know what you're talking about.
The internet will not help you out. This is also a sports series, but it's a little more risque. These are, how do I put this? This is about a rivalry between boobs and butts.
Actually, that happens all the time in my neighborhood.
So that's really, I'm sorry, that's just basically all it is. So it's about a competition for boobs and butts, and it's like Dodgeball, the movie, except with girls and boobs and butts. I don't know.
There's a strip club I hang out in where that happens every Tuesday between 6:30.
Strangest stuff, just the strangest stuff. And then lastly, Attack on Titan gets a second season. Attack on Titan is awesome. The first season was amazing. It was some of the greatest anime of the last 15, 20 years. And really impressive stuff. They did a live action movie as well, which was less impressive. You're losing the anime dimension that kind of takes you and transports you. But second season is if you caught up on the first season, it's very Game of Thronesy in the sense that you really need to follow the continuity. Second season is really awesome, and you get into the idea of where the Titan power comes from, and it really starts to peel the layers of the onion back a little bit. So it's quite cool. This is a really awesome limited edition box set. Comes with artwork and a digibook and a 60-page book proper from WIT Studio. It's just really, really impressive. And if you love the whole Attack on Titan thing, you will absolutely go nuts for this set. So good bunch of anime this week.
Anime. So we'll go from anime to just plain old animation. American style Hedgehogs. Interesting here. Hedgehogs voices. Some of the voices. A lot of big voices in this film, but some of the voices include YouTube stars. The star, they're a young woman named Gen X Penn, and the creators of this YouTube series called Smosh. And then, of course, you have John Hitter and Chevy Chase and so more, but it's interesting that the YouTube stars are identified that way.
Yeah.
They say
it's depressing.
YouTube stars, and then they say their names, and then they will, the rest of the actual professional acting cast, which is an interesting thing. Anyway, this is Hedgehogs, fairly cute little animation about a hedgehog named Bobby, who splits from the wilderness and heads into the big city with his buddy, and they hang out and do what they do, and they're real cute and cuddly, and it's actually quite a cute and fun movie. Did Hero?
No,
not her.
Not at
no
all.
princesses.
No, the hedgehogs that showed up in the Ferdinand movie were all the rage in our house. We love those hedgehogs. These hedgehogs are not at all. No way.
What are you gonna do? Sometimes you like the hedgehog. The Breadwinner, Academy Award nominee that didn't quite make it over the fence with our group.
The Breadwinner won our award.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Coco did not make it over the edge with our group. Yeah, that was. You remember that was the big there was a bit of a controversy in that
Claudia
moment.
Cry.
Yeah, the Breadwinner won our award, but and you know what? Here's the thing. The question ultimately came down. It was a little bit of a kind of a politically correct discussion over not over which was the better film, but which sort of represented the more culturally significant milestone. And look, I think Breadwinner is the better film. Coco is very, very Pixar, and I think it's wonderful that
Coco is a bigger film with a certain sort of cultural significance, but of course, The Breadwinner is culturally significant too. Afghan,
yeah, and The Breadwinner is also the first ever feature animated film completely written, directed, and produced and about women.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a 100% female driven thing, and
with a narrative that speaks not only to little girls but little brown girls in Afghanistan. A little girl in Afghanistan, her father's wrongly arrested. She has to dress up like a little boy in order to take care of her family and try to figure out a way to reconnect with her father. Which that narrative is going on.
Which is a similar narrative to the movie Osama, which was a cool little Iranian movie of about 10 years ago or so, probably longer.
A feature film.
A feature narrative, live action film about a girl who had to disguise as a boy to care for her family. So I mean, there is, and they're not ripping anything off. This actually happened and continues to happen throughout the region, and it is a serious thing that sometimes women have to play these games to be able to support their families. So it's beautifully animated. Let's be fair. It's a touching
very
story.
Very simple animation, the exact opposite of Coco and Pixar. This is.
And these are
and
Irish.
It's more than one kind of animation because there's a story going on within the stories.
And these are Irish animators. These women
Secret of Kells people.
They came from the shop that did Secret of Kells. That's right. So it's wonderful.
Nora Twomey. Audio commentary with the filmmakers. A lovely, lovely film. And live action. Aliens Ate My Homework from a series of books. Aliens Ate My Homework. About a sort of intergalactic team of lawmen made up by like middle schoolers. It's a really, really cute series of books, cute series of movies that I like quite a lot, actually. Bonus features include all kinds of neat stuff, including getting on the set with Bruce Colville, who is the guy who wrote the series of books in the first place. Which is kind of neat. Thor Ragnarok. Ragnarok. A lot of people like this a little bit more than me. As these things go, I suppose it's fine. But I'm a little bit over the Shakespeare for Dummies sort of quality of these Thor movies.
They do have a bit of that. I forget who it was. Email us at gods@digigods.com. I forget who it was on the Facebook page, but somebody made a very, very fun comment when the first trailer dropped for this and said, ooh, they poured a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy on my Thor. And I thought, that is exactly what this movie is. And that's exactly what it turned out to be. So here's my vibe on Ragnarok. I like the Thor movies. I loved the Thor comic books when I was a kid. The Thor movies represent a bit of a different thing, but a similar thing. And Ragnarok is a big deal in the comic books, a bigger deal than here. Look, Cate Blanchett is awesome.
Well, in that trailer when she did what she does to the hammer, I'm like, wait a minute.
Cate Blanchett is awesome, and Jeff Goldblum is just awesome. I don't know why he doesn't show up in every single movie. If I'm a studio head, I want Jeff Goldblum in every single movie I make. He's just great. He brings it every single time. And on balance, it's fun. It's minor Marvel in many respects. It doesn't advance their whole, this mega narrative that they're pushing,
running toward the Infinity Wars.
It doesn't
to the Infinity Wars.
It's a bit of a detour from that, and it's a bit of a gaudy one, but I had fun with it. It looks great on 4K.
And thus the deleted scenes and the gag reel and more, everything you could possibly think of. So there you go, Thor Ragnarok. Where are we going?
Okay, well, we got a ton of foreign here that has kind of accumulated over a little bit of time. So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to make mention of I know some weeks ago I mentioned about my efforts to use Google Translate to be able to buy a Blu-ray from a Finnish site. So my efforts to purchase a Blu-ray from a site in Finland that has a single word of English on it, they prevailed. It took me forever to do it, but I was finally able to do it. Thank you, PayPal. PayPal made it possible. I really don't know what... I haven't looked at the extras on this yet. I don't know what they are. This is all in Finnish, and it's one of the most difficult languages in the world.
No subtitles?
as Philip. No, there's subtitles.
Oh, good.
As Philip Seymour Hoffman. That much I can tell. I know that where it says here, Kelly Suomi. That means subtitles. And then the only word that I don't know what the first one is. I know the second one, Ruotsi, is Russian. And I'm assuming that Englanti means English.
Englanti, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yes. So we get English subtitles on this. The movie is Talvisota, which is kind of legendary from 1989, in that in 1989, Talvisota set a record that is still unsurpassed of having bought more Academy Award advertising in the trades, Variety and Hollywood Reporter, than any other movie in history. It was every day. I don't know how many millions the Finnish government spent, the Finnish film industry, but it was every day. There was a little, they were small, but every day. Talvisota, for your consideration, best foreign language film, every single day. And of course, it did not get the nomination.
No.
So that was all money wasted. However, Talvisota is an extraordinarily powerful film. It's over 3 hours long. It's about 3 hours and 15, 20 minutes long. And it is the story of the Winter War, which is what Talvisota means, which is when the rest of the world was focused on Hitler invading Poland and Czechoslovakia and France. Stalin figured nobody would give a damn if he sent his troops across the border into Finland, because who cares about Finland? Everyone's, their eye is on Hitler.
Yeah.
And
this is early. This is the late 30s. 39.
Yeah, it's 39, and it is truly a gut-wrenching movie. It's basically about these two brothers who go to war, and I will tell you nothing about it, but it is just such a powerful film. The first time I saw this, which was that year, 89, I saw all the ads in the trades, and I thought, well, damn it all, I got to go see this thing, because it's now playing 3 more days in Century City. And so I went over on like the second or third last day of its run in Century City for Academy qualification. And I all 3 hours and 15 some minutes, and I went down into my car and I sat there and I cried for like 10 minutes.
Wow.
It's so devastating what they went through. It's a really powerful film. So has not been properly released anywhere outside of Finland, but this is a 4K remaster, and God bless them. Thank goodness. So this beautiful, fantastic Blu-ray. If you can go to the Finnish website, and I think I might post something on Facebook about this. But if you can go there and you can figure it out, I really highly recommend it. But this is not. It's an import. So there it is.
Oh man, White Sun was in the running.
Yeah, it was for a moment, wasn't it? We got sent a screener
for
on
a
this.
while. Quite powerful. Two brothers in Nepal, facing all kinds of trials and tribulations as they try to have a funeral for their father. It's basically just a portrait of post-Civil War Nepal. And just like what you were talking about with Talvisota, a powerful film, but mostly because these are children, these are little kids that we're talking about.
Yep.
All the more powerful because of that. So anyway, a neat movie. On here, not a whole lot. It's just a film. We don't have any special.
No.
But
pretty bare bones.
Academy Awards nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. Nepal's selection.
Yeah.
But
their official submission.
Their official selection, but didn't make it. Yeah.
So Arrow Academy has really come on strong, and it looks like they want to give Criterion a run for their money here. We have 3 pretty impressive Arrow Academy releases. Now, remember the regular Arrow releases are the more genre films. Arrow Academy is more legit. Arrow Academy is a separate line, specifically oriented toward the Criterion level stuff. The first one here is The Witches, which is this fascinating collaboration between 5 directors, including Vittorio De Sica, Luchino Visconti, and Pier Paolo Pasolini. The other 2 are Mauro Bolognini and Franco Rossi. Franco Rossi certainly no slouch himself, but the big names here, are De Sica, Visconti, and Pasolini. Yeah. And a lot of these movies happened in the 60s, where you had these collaborations, and we're gonna talk about another one here in a moment that kind of sort of goes along the same in the same vein generally. But the idea here was that, and this is Dino De Laurentiis' doing. Dino De Laurentiis was, before he came to Hollywood, he was, big cheese, multi-Oscar nominated Italian producer. And he decided to bring together all of these great directors and do one of these legendary 60s anthology films. De Sica, I think, did 3 or 4 of these anthology films total. And the idea is that every single one of these stories was about a witch. Mm-hmm. And in every single episode, the witch would be played by Silvana Magnano. And that was it. That's the linking mechanism.
Yeah.
So
I always love those films.
It's really interesting. They did a new 2K restoration on this. And it's gorgeous, and it's a fantastically beautiful Blu-ray. And this is the first time that we've had the English language version here as well. So which is saying something that's never been released in any form whatsoever. So pretty cool stuff. The anthology film The Witches with Silvana Magnano. Then we also have Godard plus Gorin, 5 films, 1968 to 1971. These are this is an extraordinary box set, and I really recommend it, even if you aren't a Godard fan. I'm not a Godard fan. Godard gives me...
was always... I'm nuts about it.
I know you are. Godard gives me indigestion. But there are... he's a huge contributor to the history of film. You can't deny that.
Coming out of that period, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just really impressive. So after Weekend in 1967, Godard wanted to get more politically. He wanted his films to be more politically involved and more politically evocative. And he tried to invent, it's a bit of his version of like a political dogma movement. And this became a kind of a strange collaboration with Jean-Pierre Gorin, who is not a filmmaker, who's a political journalist and an activist at the time, and they formed this dogma-like group called the Group Zygovertov, named for the Russian, which means spinning top, the Russian avant-garde filmmaker. So the films that came out of that collaboration are kind of interesting. There's A Film Like Any Other, British Sounds, otherwise known as See You at Mao, Wind from the East, Struggles in Italy, and Vladimir and Rosa. In a way, I almost think these films defeat themselves a little bit. They're shot in 16 millimeter, and they're very raw and rugged and very Godardian in all of those ways. But they sometimes feel a little bit too clever and cute by half. Like they're more interested in making a cute film than in actually treating the subject in a penetrating way. So, for example, Vladimir and Rosa is reporting on the Chicago 8, on the trial of the Chicago 8. But it's all done in kind of a weird, kind of satirical way that sort of undermines the reportage. So you don't really like, well, what's the point? You're just being, are you just being like, you're just being a brat? And in many respects, Godard is a brat, but that's sort of where it goes. The most interesting of all of them is A Film Like Any Other, which deals with the May 1968 uprising. And then probably I'd say the least interesting, for me at least, would be Wind from the East, which is very, very didactic and kind of boring and much more like Godard's more recent films. So, but as a piece of history, this is quite interesting, and I would recommend that anybody who wants to understand this momentary blip in Godard's career and certainly in French cinema, this is really, really educational, and it dovetails into a lot of other interesting things from the era. So Godard plus Gorin, 5 films, 1968 to 1971, box set from Arrow. And then the last Arrow title here, which is my favorite of the week, is Viva l'Italia by Roberto Rossellini, which was made. This is kind of Rossellini was commissioned by the Italian government to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the modern state of Italy, to make a biographical film about Garibaldi, and which is sort of the Garibaldi is like the father of modern Italy in many respects, and so this is a nice, big, opulent, colorful epic. and it has all of Rossellini's trademark flourishes in it, but beautifully restored from the original negative. And this has never, ever been released in the United States in any form whatsoever since it was originally released as a film. Tons of extras here, really great extra collection. There's a new interview with Rossellini's assistant, Ruggero Deodato, which was made specifically for this release. A visual essay on Garibaldi by Tag Gallagher, who wrote The Adventures of Roberto Rossellini, the book. And there's even a reversible sleeve. If you don't like the picture that's on the cover, you can flip it around and you get a different picture. It's pretty great. So that's a beautiful Blu-ray of Viva l'Italia by Roberto Rossellini. Really good stuff.
Louis Malle's Elevator to the Gallows. I think he was about 24 when he made this.
I love this movie.
This film, just beautiful. Jean Moreau. Of course, neat movie about a couple having an affair and they decide to kill the boss. Classic story.
Yeah, classic noir.
Classic noir story.
And there's some question. This is the Criterion Blu-ray. Should point out.
Yeah.
There's some debate as to where this falls in the New Wave period, because Louis Malle is not a New Wave director.
Yeah. This is 1958, which is a little late.
It's just right there in that moment. And the question is it, do we include it or do we not include it as a New Wave film?
Yeah.
Just because he wasn't with the other guys. It still has a lot of New Wave stuff to it.
These in terms of those elements to look, but it looks more like noir.
Yeah.
It looks more like straight up noir.
Then it has that great Miles Davis score.
In it, dude, yeah. So, anyway, beautiful film. And Jean Moreau, of course, with that smile, 1958. This is full of all kinds of wonderful things on the Blu-ray special edition, special features, 2K digital restoration, and everything else, including a lot of stuff from that score that you were just talking about, and trumpeter, a program from the 2005 score featuring trumpeter John Thaddeus. So it's just a fabulous thing. Criterion Collection is what this is. Elevator to the Gallows. In the Shadow of the Women, a Philippe Garrel film. This is a really neat movie from a year or so ago that I had a chance to see. Lovely, beautifully done movie. Basically, it's a love triangle film. You have this couple with a fairly fragile marriage. He's making a documentary film. Another woman comes to work for them. He starts to have an affair with her. He's fairly cold and distant from both of them. And then the wife and the other woman start to get involved in their own thing. It's really quite wonderful. A neat little movie here. Not a whole lot on it from Icarus Films. Blade of the Immortal. Takashi
That was
Miike.
fun.
A heck of a movie,
It's insane, like all his stuff.
Yeah, you have this immortal samurai who he did something and now he's immortal, and the only way he can get his soul back is if he goes out and does good deeds. Good deeds usually involve killing somebody for somebody else, which is always interesting to me. That's a good deed. He has this woman, the woman in red, who he becomes her protector, and he has to go out and try to avenge her. Her parents were killed early. It's just it's Takashi Miike. What are you going to do? It's crazy. Cast interviews and a whole bunch of other neat stuff on this DVD.
Olive has gotten hold of 3 really great Spanish films, and it's really interesting. It's an interesting collection. Three different films, 3 different directors. The one I will make mention of first is the one that people have probably not heard of because it was never released theatrically here. It's called The Red Squirrel by Julio Medem. Julio Medem has had other films that got released here, but The Red Squirrel never was, and that's a little weird. I was at Cannes in 1993 when this was being sold, when it was made and it was being sold, and it was a big deal, and I remember it was announced that there was going to be an American remake of The Red Squirrel because it had one of those real twisty-turny mystery thriller Vertigo-like Hitchcockian plots.
Yeah, somebody's gonna commit suicide or something.
Yeah, and it never went anywhere. It's funny that remake never happened, but that was in '93 and it was a big deal, and everybody was gonna it's gonna happen. And of course, it all starts with a guy who's about to jump from a bridge and commit suicide when he is rescued by someone, and it is and that rescue then precipitates a whole series of cascading events that make you wonder about everything's motives, and what may or may not be intentional in an accident. it goes into some really, really fascinating issues about memory and what you can and can't trust and whom you can and can't trust, and it's a little bit convoluted, but the mechanics of it actually wind up working very, very quite brilliantly. So. It is absolutely Hitchcockian in all the best possible ways. It's called The Red Squirrel on Blu-ray, a Julio Medem film from Olive. The other two, Hamon Hamon, with Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem.
I think that might be my first Penelope Cruz movie, maybe.
Well, my first
would be
my first is the other one from the same year.
Yeah.
But, of course, they are now married. Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem made this movie together, and then it took them forever to finally figure out maybe we should actually be together.
They were students in school. They go back that
They
far.
do. They go way
It's a whole
back.
little tiny group there, yeah.
Took forever, but it is really this is just, the chemistry here is remarkable. They are both so young and so tremendous. He, of course, has aged quite well and gracefully. She has not aged at all.
No.
I don't know what it is. It's the paella. I don't know, but it's unbelievable. And this is directed by Bigas Luna. I know, it's the big joke. You said big ass. I get it, yeah.
Big ass movie.
But Bigas Luna has made a lot of fine films, including the Ages of Lulu, which was supposed to be released here and never was, and that's a bit of a scandalous book as well. But anyway, this is wonderful and funny and romantic and sexy, and you're watching this basically just to watch these two amazing actors have just a great deal of fun with each other, and their chemistry is just so beautiful. But the film that I really want to recommend most highly is the one that was my first Penelope Cruz movie. And that is Belle Epoque from the same year,
of course.
1992.
Of course.
Belle Epoque went on to win the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, written and directed by Fernando Treba. And Treba, I interviewed at the time, and I remember it very well. And he is nothing if not a gigantic Billy Wilder fanatic. And that shows when you watch the film, because this has Billy Wilder written all over it. It takes place in 1931. And you've got, just right on the cusp of the Spanish Civil War. And it's about a young soldier who decides he just doesn't want to fight anymore. So he goes AWOL, and he winds up basically being taken in by this guy and his family with his 4 daughters, all of whom see the young soldier as fresh meat.
Yeah.
And it is just so charming and so funny and so wonderful and so romantic and so Billy Wilder-esque in every conceivable way. And the recreation, it's just, Treba has made so many fine films, but this is one of his very best. And it's the one that won him the Oscar. And I love this movie. I love it. And you know what? Penelope Cruz is to die for in this movie. First thing I ever saw her in, and the first thing I thought was, she's a star.
Oh my God.
That's it. She's a star.
Yeah.
So, fantastic movie. Belle Epoque on Bluray from Olive.
They don't make them anymore. They don't make movies like that anymore.
They don't. They don't. It's so upsetting.
They Hamon for that matter. They don't really make either one of those movies anymore. Konchalovsky's Paradise.
This made my top 10.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, powerful movie.
Tremendous
Holocaust movie. Olga, beautiful.
All black and white.
All black and white. A beautiful Russian countess who's fighting for the French resistance. She gets into a concentration camp. She runs into this young German SS officer who knew her, who was in love with her from back when, and everything that sort of grows out of that connection and everything. It's just an absolutely stunning film.
It's a lot of interesting perspectives here. The way it's all done sort of through interviews of these characters, and the way that their perspectives do and don't necessarily correspond and don't mix and match, and the fascinating role of Russians in the French resistance. There's a history here. There's an underlying history that I didn't even know, and it's just really, it's a powerful film. It's one of Konchalovsky's very, very best.
Particularly Russian aristocrats.
Yeah,
which actually makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah,
that Russian aristocrats would be a part of the resistance.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it makes total sense. And
if you were a czarist, you don't need Stalin.
And this was at Venice, and this was a big deal at Venice. And I keep hoping that Film Movement will release a Blu-ray of this because it's out only on DVD, and it really just screams for Blu-ray because the
That black and white,
photography is
yeah.
just so gorgeous. I got some Asian themed stuff here. Mostly, it's all Chinese. So let me go through this pretty quickly. It's all Hong Kong and Chinese, some better than the other. The 2016 directing debut of Johnny Ma, called Old Stone, is a stylistic film. It's extremely well put together. I don't know if it's ultimately quite as successful as it should be. Basically deals with a taxi driver who winds up falling into this completely bizarre labyrinth of a little bit like the Scorsese film.
Bringing
No,
out the dead?
the night After Hours.
Oh, After
Thank
Hours,
you.
yeah. Early Scorsese.
Yeah, it's very After Hours-ish.
Griffin Dunn.
And then it turns really dark and weird and becomes a little bit like U-Turn at a certain point. So it's like After Hours meets U-Turn in China with a taxi driver. I don't know if that makes sense.
Paul Schrader, Oliver Stone, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
That's all of that.
Yeah, well, anyway, that's basically what this is. It gets a little bit too dark for me at a certain point. I'm not sure I buy all the conceits, but it's still very stylish and nicely done. Old Stone by Johnny Ma. Legend of the Naga Pearls is freaking nuts. This is such a bizarre fantasy. I don't even know where to go. I love wuxia, as anybody knows, but I don't love this movie. This is all about a mythical quest for these Naga pearls that may hold the key to destroying people, and it gets into all kinds of weird characters borrowed from Chinese ghost story and a lot of wire work and other mythological conceits that don't make any sense at all. I don't. It's just this really, really went way over my head, and I'm accustomed to this genre. Anyway, The Legend of the Naga Pearls. It's a lot of style over substance. Brotherhood of Blades 2, The Infernal Battlefield, is a sequel to Brotherhood of Blades. Not as good, but also not bad. It could have been a complete disaster. Liu Yang directed it. Does a very, very good, solid job. It's technically this is a prequel. Takes place before, but if you haven't seen the other one, it still stands alone, and it'll still work. I don't think it was really a necessary film to make, but it's fine. It's well acted and it's nicely mounted, and nothing really to complain about. And then lastly is the middling Extraordinary Mission, which I wish I could like more than I do, to be honest. This is directed by Alan Mock and Anthony Pune. And it's a kind of a generic police action thing. The only thing that they're trying to use to sort of give this a little bit of a boost is that Andrew Lau, who is of course the very fine director who did the Infernal Affairs trilogy, was producer on this, but that doesn't really bleed over. It just doesn't quite work. I guess we could probably describe it as being the same vein as Heat as far as American films. It has some things in common with Infernal Affairs, which of course was remade here as the Oscar-winning The Departed, but which is not as good as the original Infernal Affairs films.
Yeah. I've always thought that too.
Yeah, not even close.
Okay.
So I mean, you get a lot of this cat and mouse stuff that John Woo and Ringo Lam have done repeatedly. It just recycles a lot of cliches. It's more about the action and the plot, and you can tell the plot just isn't. It's a little bit threadbare, but Extraordinary Mission. If you're a genre fan, you'll probably enjoy it.
Well, let's see here. Viva la Liberté, long live freedom. I love this. It was absolutely hysterical. Robert Andando film. Tony Servillo in this film.
Yeah,
it's just so funny. So even the plot is funny. Here's the plot. Very important politician goes missing. His underlings think to replace him with his twin brother, who, as it happens, is insane.
Man in the Iron Mask. That's what
and Tony Servillo plays the crazy twin brother, and even the tagline is great. Power is madness. Now, to me, I'm sorry, that's a film. Why hasn't anybody adapted that?
I don't know. That sounds great.
You know, but it's Tony Servillo, of course, is a very, very funny Italian actor. He goes way back, so it's a really, really neat, a very funny film that you should check out. This one doesn't have a whole lot on it. It's just out of the movie, but the movie stands for itself. Ms. Zombie is a zombie movie, Japanese zombie movie. I love this movie. Concept of this movie by Sabu. Sort of a cult Japanese
sweet
filmmaker. Concept of this movie: rich people can buy zombies to work as maids and servants. It just sort of depends on the degree of the zombie infection on how aggressive the zombie will be. But when you get your zombie kit, it does come with a gun. So just in case the zombie gets out of control. Neat movie, a real sort of Night of the Living Dead, funny, sharp, bloody as heck. But zombies make such wonderful pets.
Two films really, really worth talking about here. One is Sunstroke by Nikita Mikhalkov, who won an Oscar for Burnt by the Sun some years ago. Now, we talked about Konchalovsky here earlier.
Yeah.
I always like to remind people, Nikita Mikhalkov and Andrei Konchalovsky are brothers.
Yeah.
Long story as to why they don't have the same last name.
Yeah.
It's one took mom's name and the other dad's name. It gets into Russian patronymics that never really makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But in any case, this is I am not usually a Mikhalkov fan. I am a Konchalovsky fan.
I love the Son, though.
See, that didn't work for me. It was that little glowing thing floating around, and I never really understood the symbolic nature. I was like, what is that thing? Is it? I don't understand.
No,
it didn't. It was a little bit too magical realism.
You
know how I am.
I never care for magical realism.
I'm just not into magical realism. But I quite like this film. This is one of his better films. And I'm sorry this didn't really get as much traction as it should have. This was made in 2015, and it was quite successful in Russia. It's all rooted in Russian history, right? Just before the revolution, and deals with some Tsarist soldiers who are in a prison camp. It takes the politics of the era, and it's actually able to sublimate it to this personal story in a way that doesn't feel preachy, that doesn't feel obvious, and really quite powerful. The Sunstroke of the title has nothing to do with Burnt by the Sun, so don't think that it's like a semi-sequel or anything like that. But it's quite a provocative film. It's the last thing that he did before that was 12, which was the Russian adaptation of 12 Angry Men, which I thought was a little bit affected. But this is really, he's getting much more back into a groove here, and it feels more epic. It feels much more politically provocative.
I wonder if the Sidney Lumet film will feel affected today. I mean, if it were made, it's been made twice, maybe 3 times even.
Yeah.
That original film, but what felt so much like verite at the day, it's all Sidney Lumet was a photographer, a cinematographer, so he knew lenses and all that. And I watched it the other day. I'm always watching the old television. I'm watching it. I'm loving this movie. But I was thinking to myself, I don't think you can do this today. I don't think you can move that camera around that move and change the depth of field and the perspectives and get away.
Maybe, all that live television stuff that he did too.
Yeah.
And then The Oldest Profession. We talked about the anthology films of the 1960s. This is another one, 1967. The Oldest Profession, which was an anthology film by, get these directors here, Franco Indovina, Michael Flegar, Mauro Bolognini. Never heard of any of those, have you?
No.
Now we get real. Claude Autant-Lara, who did the box set that was released a few weeks ago by Criterion. Philippe de Broca. And last but not least, our good friend, out of his mind, Jean-Luc Godard. And what a cat!
You telling me you didn't like the early Godard? Breathless, you didn't like. A Woman is a Woman you didn't like. Those are just
I like a woman. I like A Woman is a Woman.
Movies,
I do like a woman. Vivre sa vie. I like those.
I mean, when he gets behind her and he just leaves that. I mean, come on, that's Jean-Luc. He thought of that.
I know. I just he's such a crank.
He is an ass.
He's just such a crank.
He's an ass.
This is a guy who made wasn't King Lear a response to an angry phone call that he left for Harvey Weinstein? The phone call with Harvey Weinstein opens the movie. It's the weirdest thing ever. But you know what? This is actually kind of a fun. This is kind of a fun anthology. The idea here is that they're basically making an anthology about prostitution through the ages. That's it. And as long as we're going all in on the oldest profession, let's just have a lot of fun with our actresses. And who are we going to cast? Well, we're going to cast Raquel Welch first of all, and we're going to cast Jeanne Moreau again, second of all. And Anna Karina, of course, because, you know, she was Godard's wife and has to be in everything that he does. And then, you know, Michelle Mercier and Nadia Gray and Elsa Martinelli, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. So it's not a great film. None of the segments are going to win. You know, they're not going to be remembered as any of the best work that these directors did, but they're awfully, awfully fun. So, and to be honest, the best one here, as far as I'm concerned, is not by any of the A-list directors. It's Michael Flager's The Gay 90s with Raquel Welch, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious. And it's not, I should say, it's not about prostitution per se, but it's about prostitution in concept.
Yes.
So it throws an interesting twist on all these stories. It's not just like a bunch of stories about hookers.
It's not just
It's about, you know, when we prostitute ourselves. You know, that's the question: is what is prostitution?
And it ain't always the gals.
Yeah, it's great.
Heal the Living, which is an interesting film, quite moving actually. Three seemingly disparate stories that tie together. A young man dies in a car accident.
Yep.
His family has to make a decision about transplants and what their decision will mean to the other people whom they do not know in the story, but whom we get to meet. Is what this movie's about, and it's really quite from Cohen Media. An excellent movie with an interview from the director. How do you say that director's name?
The director's name, Catel Kilavere. Wow, that's a tough one to pronounce. Yeah, that's like old French something or other.
I knew you could do it.
And then Cantinflas is Cantinflas is a legendary figure, a legendary Mexican actor who probably is most well known here for his part in the 1956 Best Picture winner Around the World in 80 Days, the Michael Todd monstrosity that also has the nerve to cast Shirley MacLaine as an Indian princess. That just, you know, that movie is so not good, and it wasn't good then. But David Nevin kills it, and it was the first, you know, widescreen film to win Best Picture, so it's historically significant. Anyway, Cantinflas made a lot of movies that still kind of they're all cheesy. They're all, but you know, look.
What's his equivalent? His equivalent, I mean, you know, in America would be what?
That's a great question.
Like he's like all three of the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
He's like both Laurel and Hardy.
He's like all three of the Marx Brothers.
He's like all three of the Marx Brothers, yeah.
He's just, I wouldn't say he's Jerry Lewis because he's a little too sweet and cute and endearing.
Yeah.
You know, in a way. But that might even be something of an apt analogy. Anyway, from Mill Creek, we have a couple of double features here. We have the two films Conserje on Condominio and Por mi Pistolas together on one, and I know my Spanish is just sounds awful. And then on the other is El Barrendero and Gran Hotel on the other double feature. You know what? Gran Hotel might be the best of all of these. Yeah. It's the one that feels he's younger. It's more. It made in 1944, and it's kind of, you know, more endearing in the way that he always was. The other films were made later, 60s and 70s, and he's kind of losing a step, and the movies aren't quite as good. But still, you know, Cantinflas, if you're a fan and you want to see how his career evolved and try to figure out a little bit why he was so popular, which mystifies some people, you got a couple more double features out from Mill Creek.
Fantastic. A little television?
Yeah, let's hit some TV.
The first season of MacGyver, of course, the new MacGyver.
Oh, God.
This MacGyver. I got to tell you, you know, knocked off one or two of these when it first, because, you know, I'm a MacGyver guy from the 80s.
Sure.
Richard Dean Anderson, who went on, by the way, to make just as many of those Stargates. This guy
crazy,
is rich
right?
like 3 times over. The MacGyvers, 4 or 5. I mean, the people who make money in this town, who are
TV.
really it's
TV.
the television people.
Yeah.
You know, we always think movie stars. It's not. Anyway, so I watched this. It's more like the A-Team than MacGyver was, you know, on television. He's not really working by himself, doing his things. It's a whole thing. But I suppose it's okay if you're into MacGyver. Alibi, Michael Kitchen. Love Michael Kitchen for one thing. This is a TV movie, a British TV movie. It's just about the darkest, funniest, trippiest little TV movie that you would ever want to see. Feature film quality, this movie. Sophie Okonedo and Phyllis Logan from, I think she's in Downton Abbey, if I'm not mistaken, in Michael Kitchen, right?
Yeah.
All right, so like this movie, this businessman throws this party for this guy. The family is there, his business partner is there. People are roaming around doing this, that, and the other thing. He goes off back to the big house, right?
Okay.
A little bit later, his wife comes to the big house and sees him moving the body of his dead partner.
Oh, no.
And he's like, it's not what it looks like. and we're off to the, and you know, and the thing of it is, it's not. But it is something. Yeah, it's something, but it ain't what it looks like. And it's a hell of a funny, really, really good British television movie starring Michael Kitchen. Which there was more on here, but I'm afraid it's not. 3 episodes put together, so it's laid out in the 3 episodes as it was when it aired on British television.
Yeah. East West 101 is a really interesting Australian series. This is the first season, series 1 of from Acorn of the Australian show. East West 101, which is about a Muslim detective, a Muslim police officer. He works for the Major Crime Squad in Sydney, and how his life has obviously changed and his work has changed in the post 9/11 world. And that's especially interesting considering that 9/11 was not in Australia, but it obviously the ripple effect carried across the world. And it obviously now affects them there. And it's a really well written and incredibly well acted show. It doesn't feel preachy. It's not trying to make a statement. It's just using that premise as ground zero for some very interesting drama and character conflicts. And it's very, very sharp. I hope they don't try to remake it here in any way because it wouldn't work nearly as well.
Yeah. Same thing with this one, Rebecca Martinsson, Swedish series.
Yeah.
Right. 8 episodes here. So this is a really, really neat series, but it depends on being set where it's set, which is not only in Sweden, but in the north of Sweden.
Oh, yeah.
In the winter. When it's basically night most of the time. What happens is a very successful young lawyer who's in Stockholm doing her thing finds out that her childhood friend has died. She goes home to the north of Sweden where she's from, where she was glad to get the hell away from as a young woman, and starts looking into the situation with her late friend and decides that it wasn't an accident and that it was a murder.
Ooh.
She's a lawyer. She contacts another childhood friend who now works for the police department. And these 2 ladies, these 2 women, and that's what another interesting thing about these series, these 2 women set out to find out what happened to their childhood friend actually. And it's a neat story, neat mystery, all of that. But most of it, a lot of it, has to do with the fact of where we are in Sweden, in the north of Sweden, in this particular set of places, with all of the little glitches and quirks that comes along with being in a place where it's cold and dark almost all the time.
A really interesting series from the same people who created Prime Suspect is The Commander. I think this has really gained a lot of traction in the UK. First I've seen of it. The Commander stars Amanda Burton as a woman who has now become the highest-ranking woman in Scotland Yard, and she runs the murder review team. Her actual title is one that I kind of had to laugh at. She is the group commander of she's the commander of the Serious Crime Group. Yeah. The Serious Crime Group.
As opposed to
crimes that aren't so serious.
Yeah.
But it's a serious crime. What'd that guy do? Well, he's serious crime. Okay.
It's not just murder.
It's not. We better call the commander. But anyway, of course, it is the murder review team, and it's less about solving the crimes than it is about the fact that this is an incredibly ambitious and sometimes a little bit unhinged woman who is pouring herself into her job with reckless abandon.
Yeah.
And Amanda Burton is really, really a great actress. I'm not that familiar with her apart from this, but boy, this is terrific stuff. This is the complete collection. This show ran about 10 years ago, and so you see a lot of people show up in here who who would go on to bigger and better things from other shows and other movies. So there's a lot of a lot of stuff in here. But anyway, it's a great show. It airs now on Acorn TV as well. Here, if you have access to Acorn TV, and continues to be enormously popular in the UK. So anyway, it's a complete collection of The Commander, which is a kind of a nice discovery.
Yeah. This series, when it was on, I was more intrigued. But 1997, Robert Altman did a television series called Gun.
Yeah.
The premise of the series, the conceit of the series is that we would follow a single gun as it made its way
I remember that.
the hands of different people from each episode. Just the one gun that by hook or by crook made its way into the hands of the person in the next episode, and everything that sort of resulted from that. Love that concept, that premise. The other thing I liked about this series, which was very short-lived, 6-film anthology, are the people that were in it, whom I could pick out. Some of them were already movie stars or television stars, but some of them weren't. James Gandolfino was not yet Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
Johnny Whitworth was not just an important actor, but you had your Kathy Bakers and your Edward James Olmoses and your Maria Conchita. Fred Ward shows up. Ed Begley Jr. shows. Christopher McDonald shows up in one of these. Daryl Hannah, Martin Sheen shows up in one of these, and then among the 6, you have your interesting directors. Of course, Robert Altman directed All the President's Women, which is one of the episodes. But also here you got James Foley, you got Ted Demme, the late Ted Demme, you've got Jeremiah Chechik, you got Peter Horton, directing episodes of this series produced by Robert Altman. What I didn't like about these series was like the actual narratives of the stories. Most of them were not as captivating as I wanted them to be.
Yep.
So, thus the short-lived series. Nevertheless, it's a chance to see a lot of these actors and many, many others. Randy Quaid and so many, from 20 years ago, kind of doing their thing. Some of the young directors started coming up and doing their thing. Neat series from the late Robert Altman. Gun, a 6-part film anthology.
And that takes us, as we close out, to some classic movies, one of which is an Altman film, Altman's Images, which is basically like Robert Altman's version of Polanski's Repulsion.
Yeah.
Is what Images is. Images is a really cool film, and one of the more interesting Altman films of the period. It was something that he'd wanted to do for many, many years. This was apparently one of his very earliest ideas for a narrative film back when he was making industrial movies and industrial documentaries and stuff in the 60s. This is something that he wanted. This sort of occurred to him, and it has a very counterculture psychedelic vibe to it. Susanna York plays a woman, an author who's pregnant and who thinks that her husband may be unfaithful. And during a vacation, that stress, and obviously the stress of the pregnancy, contributes to a breakdown in her psychological state, and it gets all kinds of weird and cool and funky. It's a really interesting film. This is from Arrow Academy. Tons of extras on here. I'd forgotten what an amazing bunch of people worked on this.
Yeah.
This was the first film scored by John Williams and photographed by Vilmos Zsigmond.
Oh, wow.
Of course, who would go on to do Close Encounters together, right? Yeah. And, you thought about that. It's like, wow, Altman working with,
Vilmos and
John Williams. Fascinating.
This is my first, I was thinking about it as you were speaking. I think it's my first time, René Auberginois.
Yeah, plays the husband.
Who, of course, we know is Odo from Deep Space Nine and it's so many.
Tons of television.
Tall, skinny, blonde actor who you know.
Who, of course, by the way, also is a voice in Little Mermaid.
Oh yes,
yeah.
But he's one of those actors where he's been around for 45 years,
forever,
and we just don't think about him that much. But there he is.
Yep, and a lot of other people contributed to this as well. Stomu Yamashita, the great Japanese composer, who of course is best known from the group Go, and also from his amazing score for Paul Mazursky's Tempest. Stomu Yamashita was the sound designer on this thing, so it gets funky and weird, and it's all it's really quite a film. A lot of interesting extras on here. There's a select scene commentary recorded by Altman, obviously when he was still alive, and another commentary by a couple of film scholars, and it's a sharp release. And then we also have from Arrow Video, as long as we are wrapping out with Arrow, the very disturbing film Scalpel.
Yeah.
The Scalpel is an exploitation film of sorts from the mid to late 70s, and it is not a family film. Let's just be very clear on that. This stars Robert Lansing as this is probably more like what Cronenberg would have made Dead Ringers if he had a stiffer backbone.
Yeah,
this is what Dead Ringers probably should and could have been. Anyway, John Grissmer is the director of this, who previously made a movie called Blood Rage. And it stars Robert Lansing as an absolutely out-of-his-mind surgeon who is trying to cope with with a runaway daughter and a crime. Oh, how do I not reveal this? His daughter's run away, and then there's a crime. I'll leave it at that. I won't tell you how any of this ties together. But all of this creates a scenario that winds up being much more like Eyes Without a Face, the famous French film, than anything else, except it's like an exploitation version of Eyes Without a Face, and it's really creepy and weird. Anyway, this was I think once upon a time a bit of a drive-in movie, but here it is. It's Scalpel, and boy, is it a creep fest.
Yeah, man, I'll say.
And then we've got another weird one from the vaults, Black Eagle.
Jean-Claude.
This is from the MVD Rewind collection, which is great. I love that they put the stickers. They like put the phony stickers that would have been on a VHS. It's really funny.
When the movie was actually made.
Yeah, they wanted to have that like dated look. So Jean-Claude Van Damme and Sho Kosugi, who basically did all of the really bad martial arts movies in the 1980s, came together on this utterly bizarre and not very good actioner that is, it's really silly.
Best thing in that movie is the F-111.
Yeah, I mean the
F-111 being
the plane,
aircraft
which gets shot down in the Mediterranean, and then there's a whole like Cold War race with the Russians that goes on, and Van Damme is completely ridiculous. He plays a KGB agent here. The first time that he played it, he would go on to play the quote unquote Russian in No Retreat, No Surrender, which is that really silly movie about the kid who's, who's coached by the ghost of Bruce Lee to defeat which I love because he looks at him at one point and goes, "You Russian?" And Van Damme gets really irate. It's like Karate Kid meets Rocky IV, and with all the worst possible ways. But in any case, this is a very, very silly film. Lots of extras here. You see this only if you have any kind of sentimental attachment to Van Damme and Kosugi from their early days, but it's not anyone's finest hour here.
I wonder if Van Damme still has that series.
Oh, he may. He may
still got that series.
Let's see here. We've got
Manhattan Murder Mystery. I'll do it just because I got it in my Alan Alda, Woody Allen, Angelica Houston, Diane Keaton in Manhattan Murder Mystery.
Fantastic.
Just absolutely fantastic film. That is probably coming. We're coming up on this would be near the end of that really great run that Woody had in the middle '90s.
Yeah.
It included your crimes and misdemeanors. It included your Hannah and her sisters, husbands and wives. Just that amazing
period. That amazing run.
We forget about it sometimes.
Zelig. You can throw Zelig in there. Yeah.
It starts about 1990 and runs through about two.
I think we could start about 85. You could start about 85
because I always take a break at September. Which as a movie that I like more, we're talking about doing a wonderful book series. We're talking about that's going to be one of the movies that I've reconsidered. from when I wrote it. But I used to take a break at September because I didn't care for that.
Yeah.
And then it was a hard shift for Woody too. That was a hard shift, you know.
It was.
And then Yellow Rose, Purple Rose.
Purple Rose.
And then I'm like, okay, now we're back on track, and we have that run.
Yeah.
And I think it ran through about this movie here, and then it was kind of over for a while, and then it started up again with a little run.
My favorite thing in Manhattan Murder Mystery is Alan Alda and Diane Keaton sitting in that car on their stakeout, their amateur stakeout.
Yeah.
And there's it's all silent. There's no dialogue. It's a great Woody Allen moment with no dialogue, and they're sitting there and they look at each other. And they're like little kids in a candy store. And Alan Alda gets this just wry grin on his face. He could not be happier because he's playing detective.
Yeah.
It's the cutest thing in the world. It is so sweet and so funny. And the look on his face is just it's priceless. It's his best moment in movies.
And this might be the last time that and again, I'm being real loose with my memory now, that I remember Woody, because Woody's in the movie.
Yeah.
And him being good.
Yeah.
As an actor.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
As opposed to a little bit later when he gets a little bit older, he still puts himself in a movie too, Hollywood, indie, you know, whatever. And he's a little wacky, he's a little shaky, and he's a little, and he rambles on a bit. But in this movie, he's hitting his mark, he's hitting his lines.
Yeah,
so there you go, an underrated. You know what? I'm gonna have to put this one on. It's gonna go on my list. I just realized this is going on my list. All right, whatever. Anyway,
so that's from Twilight Time, and we've got 3 more from Twilight Time as well, which are all freaking gems this week. TwilightTimeMovies.com, by the way, is where you go for these. TwilightTimeMovies.com. The other one was Harry and Walter Go to New York, which is a Mark Rydell film from 1976, and it is an absolute and total complete gem. Diane Keaton is in this the year before she became Annie Hall.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is basically kind of a Laurel and Hardy-esque pairing of Elliot Gould and James Caan, who, of course, were in their prime at this time, as was Diane Keaton. It's absolutely delightful. Kind of a in the same vein as The Sting in many respects. They wanted to sort of do something a little bit similar, but a little bit more slapsticky, and it's absolutely wonderful. I find this film so charming. You know, small-time crooks. It's just really great.
I like Mark Rydell. He's a halfway decent actor, too, Mark.
Absolutely true. Mark Rydell's done a lot of great stuff. And then the last 2 from Twilight Time is The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon, Marigolds, which is the longest title that somehow everybody manages to remember. This was produced and directed by Paul Newman and starred his wife, Joanne Woodward. And really very, very touching adaptation by Alvin Sargent of the Pulitzer Prize-winning play, which, you know, still kind of packs a wallop. It feels very 1970s, but it's still really, really very, very sharp. And then the other one is The Incident, which is still also packs a wallop, from 1967, directed by Larry Pierce. Really tough performances in here. Beau Bridges in particular is just so good, as is Martin Sheen as one of these 2 punks who terrorize people on a New York subway. Really gritty, kind of cinema verite look to this thing.
Ruby Dee, Brock Peters, Tony Mastante, that you know,
Yeah.
real John Cassavetes sort of feel to it. Not John Cassavetes, but that mood.
And Pierce does a commentary here with Nick Redmond from Twilight Time. So it's just absolutely terrific film. And I think that's it then. So we are done this week. We will be back next week to talk about the Oscars.